Hi everyone, we're Stuart and Dave Bell, father and son. I'm Stuart, founder of Alive Church and the Ground Level Network of Churches.
And I'm Dave, a worship leader and songwriter, and together we're launching Church Chat, a space where we can talk openly about church, family, and life from two generations of experience.
We've seen the good, the bad, and the downright interesting. And while we certainly don't have all the answers, we've learned a few valuable lessons along the way.
So why not join us now for heartfelt, faith-filled conversations designed to encourage you, challenge you, and hopefully help you on your own journey. We are back. This is number 4. I think this one's going to be a little bit of an emotional one. So let's just have a bit of a recap before we jump into it. So we've been looking at these 5 levels of leadership, and this is my observations of your life so far. And so let's just recap. So session 1 was calling or career, and we spoke about that. The opportunity presented to you was the knocking down of the wall. People are going to have to go back and watch these because I think they are. It's good content. Number 2, character and commitment. In terms of you need character to stay committed to the call, be the same on the platform as you are off the platform. All of those things to do with family, parenting. You've got it. Number 3, which we just recently did, competition or kingdom. Talking about unity, kingdom, those type of things, which bring you to that level of leadership. But the next one is going to be pretty interesting for me and you to talk about. And it begins with C, again, which you'll be happy. I've followed you when you outline a sermon alliteration. So this number is crisis or collapse.
Right.
And, these levels of leadership that this isn't me. This isn't the typical New York Times bestseller American preacher with perfect white teeth telling you to follow
the perfect life, of course.
Following these 7 steps and you will be the world's best leader. This is somebody who's committed to one place, stayed in one church and built from the ground up and all these type of things. And these levels of leadership, most people operate at a certain level and that is absolutely fine. But sometimes opportunities are presented that just allows us to, I suppose, go into a new level of leadership. And most people will stay at number 3, which is a really amazing place to be. You've got the call of God on your life. You're committed. You're of great character. You've understood kingdom rather than competition. And we could live our lives there. That would be great. But sometimes leaders have to do a thing that we termed in our book recently, leading while bleeding. Which is another level of leadership. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And in the studio here, not only do we have Pete, who's been amazing, but we have my mother, your wife, Irene, is sat in here. So this could get a little bit dangerous. So if you do hear tears flooding in the background, it's probably not Pete.
That's true.
It could be Irene. But I thought, because this is going to be a little bit of a heavy one, I read an interesting story I wanted to talk to you about today.
Are we going to be crossing one of those lines that we talked about?
Never seen the line, so don't know where it is.
Okay.
But
I'll tell you afterwards.
You'll tell me after. So obviously you've been in a season of transition. In the original sense of the word, you are out of senior leadership into what you're doing now. Now, I heard a great story. So, a senior leader has just come out of leading a church, faithfully led a church, 30 years. He's handed it on to the new guy, okay? The new pastor of the church looks in the diary and he notices he's got a sermon series coming up. And this is going to be a bit awkward because my mum and dad are in the room, but there's a talk he's wanting to bring to the church on a Sunday morning on sex. Okay. You know what that is?
Physical relationships.
Yes. Yeah. So he's a little bit nervous. He feels underqualified to talk about such a subject. So he thought, I tell you what I'll do. I'll ring the founding pastor and I'll get him back in to give the talk because he's probably more equipped to talk about such things like that. So anyway, he gives him a call. The founding pastor answers the phone and he says, hello, founding pastor. I am doing a sermon series, and when we get to week 4, I've got to do a talk on sex. And I feel a little bit underqualified to do so. is that something that you'd be happy to jump back in and do? And he said, yeah, I would love to do that. Spoken about it a lot. I know what I'm doing. So he goes, great. Would you mind putting the date down? So he said, no problem. I'm a bit of a pen and paper guy. That's like you are. So he gets his diary out. He finds the Sunday that he's meant to do this talk, but he thinks, I'm not going to write that word in my diary, talk about, because it's just going to look a bit odd. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to talk about sailing, because then if somebody opens my diary and sees that, it's not going to be odd. Okay. We're getting closer to the weekend. The church are hyped. They know the talk that's coming. And so the new pastor, a little bit nervous, obviously new to leadership, he thought, I better just check in with the founding pastor just to make sure everything's okay for the weekend. So he rings their phone. It's a house phone because he's older. He's got a house phone. Do you have a house phone?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we very seldom use it.
So,
yeah.
right.
Was it a trim phone?
I don't know what that is. But anyway, the phone rings. Okay, so he's ringing. He's waiting for the answer. The founding pastor's wife answers the phone and says, hello, is such and such there, please? I'd just like to check something for Sunday. And she said, he's not in, actually. He's out playing golf. And so he thought, oh, no, that's made me a little bit nervous. She said, oh, you're talking about this Sunday? Well, he uses his diary all the time. Let me go and check his diary for you. He waits on the end of the phone. The founding pastor's wife, she opens the diary to the Sunday entry and she says she sees founding pastor speaking at church on the subject of sailing. Anyway, she reads this in her head. She goes back to the phone and she starts laughing. So the new pastor's like, what's she laughing at? He went, I've just seen what he's talking about on Sunday. She's like, and he's waiting for a response. She went, he knows nothing about that subject. The last time he tried to do that, he was violently sick and the wind blew his hat off.
Oh dear. Well, Irene, do you think he crossed a line?
Isn't that gold?
Oh, that's excellent.
Anyway,
yeah.
that's a good story to start because this is going to be...
Founding pastors gifted.
Founding pastors are gifted, yeah. What we're going to talk about is this next level of leadership, which is crisis or collapse. And so we did try just lightening the mood a little bit a moment ago because this is going to be a little bit of a heavier one. And certainly this isn't a path that all leaders have to walk, which is amazing. But some leaders are in situations where, once again, as I've tried to use these illustrations, whether it's the knocking down of the wall, the answering of the phone, I'm going to let our viewers into a little secret on this episode. It's actually to do with the opening of a wardrobe. So I'm just going to leave you with that. And you might be able to sense where that is going.
Yeah.
And the decision that was made then, I think, was... why that I think that you became this level of leader and crisis or collapse. And one thing that we don't anticipate as leaders is illness, struggle, setback, financial crisis, relational breakdowns. They're usually things we counsel other people in. We don't usually associate them with coming to our own door. But just recapping a little bit of the story, when we wrote about this in the book, we kind of found ourselves as a family, even though as I was younger, you would say, I think you quoted, that our lives seemed kissed by grace.
Yeah, I've got a story about that actually to do with Grapevine.
Yeah.
Irene and I on the Friday night, it'd be the Thursday night before the Friday began. We went to the showground. A number were praying across the showground, and we went into the big top.
Yeah.
And in those days, there were stands, and we went to the top of the bleachers, the stands, and we sat. And I remember just having a little nostalgic chat. Isn't it amazing that this tent's going to be filled with thousands of people? Who would have guessed that this had happened? And I remember saying something like, it feels as though our lives have been, kissed with his grace, some phrase like that. Amazed at God's goodness, amazed at God's kindness. But we'd just been through some of the refreshing meetings of the power and presence of the Holy Spirit, really enjoyed the presence of God in very special ways. We've been to a number of special meetings. I remember in Pittsburgh, great move of the Spirit, again, a unity move. Hours of people being prayed for to be blessed. It was a real time of refreshing and joy, marked out by laughter and, some phenomena of the Spirit. And we'd had lots and lots of meetings, evenings and so on. And I remember saying something like, it's amazing our lives have been kissed with His grace. His blessing is on our lives. And I wonder if we've been, if you like, strengthened and blessed for harder days ahead.
Sure.
I remember thinking, a bit about the Joseph thing and the Joseph story of, periods of blessing and then periods of hardship and so on. And it was amazing because it wasn't long after that episode that the page of a new chapter kind of turned from everything going right to a lot of things coming into our lives, starting firstly with the loss of our parents, my mum and dad and Irene's mum and dad. And it's amazing, isn't it? And often things seem to come together.
Sure.
And so we had those things take place in our lives, but the bigger challenge was just around the corner, which we're going to talk about now.
And I think I would experience the same at, 16 years old, great relationships with friends, family, didn't have any time or room in life, I suppose, for anything untoward. Played a lot of football, soccer to our American friends, and I'd like to go on record. I was the top goal scorer in the A division in my first league, 34 goals.
And I'd like to go on record that I was often at the side cheering you on.
You were, absolutely. And I suppose, as you've said, a chapter in our lives turned, and it actually started with Mum having a few struggles with her back. And
we mentioned the parents' deaths. Then there was Irene had a number of issues culminating in back surgery, and
she is now the bionic woman.
She is. Strangely, slightly smaller. Than in those days, and that's with
bars.
I was going to think of the word bars,
metal bar,
and screws in the back.
Well, so obviously the greater challenge that we faced was to do with me. And I remember waking up one day, and it's always very difficult, even a number of years on, to reshare the story, as you can imagine. But we did make a promise. I made a promise to God that I would continue to do it, no matter how difficult that is, because I know it helps people. And to cut a very long story short, because obviously there was so much that went on, ended up in me going to see an eye consultant, because woke up one day and there was definitely something wrong with my eye. And we just went locally to have a look, and he had a look into the back of my eye and kind of stepped back a bit from there and said, this is beyond me. I'm going to have to refer you to one of the leading ophthalmologists in the country. He's in Leicester, and he'll be able to help you from here. Didn't really give anything away, and we kind of thought, oh, that's annoying, isn't it? We wanted this just dealt with and over. And so we got in the car, and we often make jokes about your driving, don't we? Which is a little bit unfair. But
I don't.
In this day, there wasn't the great road from Lincoln to Leicester that there is now. So, and with you being the law-abiding citizen that you are, it took a bit of time to get there.
Oh, because I kept to the rules of the road, of course.
Absolutely. But when we arrived, I think that was the moment when we noticed something wasn't right. So the leading man's registrar came into the room, and she kind of took one look at me, walked out immediately, and we looked at each other and thought, that's probably not a good sign. And then an amazing man walked in who became my consultant, dressed in a suit, looked great, and he informed me that there was something going on he was really concerned about and needed to get me back for an operation on my eye. And so we went home that day, and kind of a little bit disillusioned, bit thinking about this is turning out to be something beyond what we thought, but certainly had no ideas that this would be anything other than
an infection. Or
yeah, absolutely. So I went back for the operation, which was pretty nasty, obviously, having surgery on your eye. And it was at that point in time when I was in the recovery room asleep, you were asked as a family to go into one of those side rooms. And just, for any family with children, those are the rooms that you never, ever want to be in, where you're taken and you're counselled by the medical team that what they have seen could be a devastating diagnosis. And I remember the first person's face I saw when I woke up from that operation was your face. And I asked you all the questions a young 16-year-old boy would say. What have they said? What have they said? Am I going to keep my eye? All these type of things. And you looked at me and you didn't bury your head in the sand. You didn't just tell me what I wanted to hear. You said, whatever this thing is, Dave, we're going to fight it with all that we have. I then entered the darkest week of my life. It was waiting for the results, not knowing the prognosis, what was going to happen, but had heard words like aggressive and heard words of disease. And I was 16, just thought I was invincible. I thought, I went to church every Sunday. My parents are the pastors. I play guitar in the worship team. What bad could possibly happen to me? I remember also, a little side note, and this just a gentle encouragement, because if I'm telling you this sad story, you can't get mad at me. I went to a stag do that week, if you remember. And I was young, so I was only 16, but I went to an Indian restaurant where a lot of my friends or people I had looked up to in church were behaving in a way that they shouldn't have been behaving. I don't know about you, some people, especially men in the church, see these opportunities as a pass to misbehave and then just ask God for forgiveness the next day. I personally don't think it should work like that, and that really hurt me deep within to see people I'd looked up to misbehaving, and I was the one facing this trial and this battle. And so I made a decision there that if I were to ever get married, my stag do and all of those things associated wouldn't be anything like what I experienced. So that's maybe just a little encouragement to the people not to abuse the wonderful gift of grace.
Yeah. I actually think there's less of that going on today.
Yeah.
I think there are some encouraging signs around our church at the moment. There's a generation coming through that are getting serious about the Bible and prayer and those kind of things. And they're actually going out on the streets and sharing the gospel.
That is very true.
I do think things have shifted.
Yeah.
I think that era, there were people that had been brought up in church life and got used to it.
Yeah.
And taken things for granted. And hopefully they've passed through those things and
let's hope
come to a better way.
And so we went back. We did that famous little journey from Lincoln to Leicester.
With me driving.
With you driving.
Yeah.
And I suppose we were given news we never thought we'd hear in a lifetime. And it was a pretty bleak prognosis. And they even used some statistics of a 3 in a million just in my age, and below. So incredibly rare. And first time we'd heard the C word, which I don't even want to give any airtime to today. And we were forced into a world I think I'd only ever seen on TV. Maybe we'd been in the comfort of our own family home and you'd see a children's oncology ward and you would have a huge amount of compassion and feel hurt, but you would never associate it with your own life. And I had to be aware that this home, what was called Ward 27, was going to become my new home. And I then went into a week of intense testing, every test possible to the human body I pretty much had done. I had a Hickman line fitted into the top of my heart that made a hole in my chest, and that hung out. And as you were saying, perspective, we had to really quickly look at our perspective on this. And I remember opening the Bible when I was just about to have another operation, and it fell open to the John chapter 9, which is the story of the man born blind. And Jesus answers a lot of those perspective questions quite quickly to his disciples. Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus' answer was, well, neither. This is happening, so the work,
I think
my work,
that's a very
might be
important
displayed.
thing, because in church life there's often been that's almost a cruel comment,
Yeah.
has this come to you because of some sin in your life?
Yeah.
And of course, as a pastor, I was asking that about our family.
Yeah.
Did we leave some door open? Is there something that... And we talked as a family around that scripture quite a bit. In
Yeah.
fact, we wrote a book as a result of the...
Yeah.
You remember when Jesus spat on the ground and made
Yeah.
the mud and
Yeah.
put it in his eyes, and
Yeah.
and that's not what you do, is it? With
No.
with an eye, and yet there was symbolism there for us, and
Yeah.
quite a great description actually.
Yeah.
Of mud in the eye, we called it,
Yeah.
and we found out that you got to have a lot of treatment.
Yeah. I remember the first day of the treatment, we woke up and I was obviously very scared about it, because it wasn't just a tablet send you on your way home. It was hooked up to machines for a few days on end, and I remember they had to put the total 6,000 millilitres of fluid just around my body before they would administrate the chemotherapy, just to try, and in the hope of protecting some of the vital organs.
I know. Thankfully they did that.
They did.
We ought to back up slightly though, didn't we? Because that first time when we heard the news...
Yes.
We need to say a thank you, don't we, as well, to Pete and Kath Atkins.
Absolutely.
Dr. Pete was a real strength to us behind the scenes. If we
Huge.
felt a little bit in darkness, Irene and I would pop down, pop round. We lived close to each other at the time. And on that particular day we went to see the consultant, they came with us, didn't they?
Yeah.
And the story I think you're going to come to happened on that day, didn't it?
Yeah, we've got a lot to be thankful for that family, actually. When we were about to start the treatment, it was Mum's Bible note reading. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And thank God.
That was Naaman, wasn't it?
Thank God for UCB reading notes.
Yeah.
And so I said to you, well, can't we just go home and pray a bit harder? Because, in the Bible, we see blind eyes open and we see sicknesses leave people's body, and that would have been nice. Yeah. But there was a bit of a different path I had to walk. And when Mum was reading these notes, it talked about Naaman being dipped 7 times in the muddy waters of the River Jordan. And then
mud came in both passages.
It did. And there's a little throwaway comment that I'd never really noticed in there. It said Naaman would have chosen any other river. Yeah. And I suppose for us, we'd have chosen any other way.
Well, who wants chemotherapy and radiotherapy?
Yeah.
And of course we had prayer teams that were praying, and there are stories attached to that, aren't there?
Huge amount.
God never gave us that overnight miracle, but there were definite miracles
daily
on the
ones.
way. Yeah.
So I remember as treatment started, we one of the big moments for me was the Dave hair losing ceremony that we had at our house. And one of the things that we decided, which I think was as we had this perspective that this wasn't God, this isn't punishment, this isn't something that I'd done wrong, but God was going to allow me to walk through this, and he was going to then use it somehow, even though we had no clue what that would look like. There are some things I thought that are out of my control at this stage. I had to trust in God a lot, but there are some things that are in my control. Yeah. And I remember thinking, if this chemotherapy my hair's going to all fall out at 16, how about I get there first? And how about we make it into a fun Dave hair losing party, and instead of the treatment winning, I'm going to do that. So sat in the kitchen, and Glenn, my brother-in-law, got the clippers out, shaved my head, and I suppose then when you take time out privately and look into the mirror and see that, that's when the story, I think, got real for me. And subsequently, about 6 to 8 months of treatment. I would go into a hospital usually on a Monday or a Wednesday, stay there for 3 days in a bed whilst, I suppose you could call it poison, was put through my body. And we then found out that I had to have 25 sessions of pretty intense radiotherapy, which is a whole new thing in itself. We'd been prepared for these side effects of chemo, and then we hear about radiotherapy. But there was an amazing story, wasn't there, on the 7th?
Yeah.
And so we, as
seventh chemotherapy.
yeah, and so we talk about overnight miracle, but the daily miracles and things that God did, even to the extent where I had to have my blood checked, didn't I, before I would go in, and there was a level that they were looking for because the chemotherapy was so toxic. Yeah. The number had to be a certain thing.
Yeah,
so the
and
nurse
Mum monitored that really closely, and she wouldn't take no for an answer if they said there's no possibility of treatment this week.
Yeah.
She would say, well, we need the blood taken again, and then you'd find they actually talked of you being the magical neutrophil maker, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was amazing. So supernatural. Even at one time, I believe they asked Mum if it was her blood.
They did, really. They did, yeah.
Because they were just like, this in the natural just doesn't happen. Yeah. And so there was things like that. But we had the word that on the seventh dip, you would be healed. But
I remember saying it too. There were certain things that I said not knowing.
Yeah.
Like, we'll fight this.
Yeah.
So no word, you're going to get well. Because we couldn't do that. Yeah. But I remember after us getting those scriptures, I remember saying to you, really, as leadership as I could, you will be healed on the seventh dip. Now, how could you prove that? Yeah. And when I'd said it, I'm then thinking it'd be nice to have some kind of sign that I'm not crazy.
Yes, and you weren't, because my protocol had said I needed 9 rounds of this stuff and 25 of the radiotherapy. So when we got to session 7, I was laying in the bed as usual, and one of the things was the chemotherapy was always on time, and because of my stuff was pretty toxic, they brought a whole team of people, and it was a big operation, wasn't it, to start it going. And I remember thinking, they're a little bit late today, that's unusual. And I had this line fitted into the top of my heart, and I had to have a surgery to put it in. It was stitched in place. I'd played, I'd done as much activity as I could for the last 4 months.
Yeah, because often we nervously say, step back a bit, don't do that.
Don't do this. So this was all tied up in place. Once I was finished my treatment, I'd have to go back for a surgery to actually have it removed. That's how kind of fixed in place it was. And obviously everybody was praying, and we were thinking it would be great to have a sign, on the 7th. And I remember laying in the bed thinking the chemotherapy's late, probably feeling pretty unwell. And I felt this funny sensation in my chest. And I looked down, there's nobody there. There's nothing pulling on it. It's not caught. There's no reason at all. And I felt this almost like a pulling sensation. Like there was somebody on the end of that thing pulling it. That obviously freaked me out a little bit, because I'm like, have I got it caught? So, if you were to watch me back on a TV, I'd be like looking what's going on. There was nothing there. That it was hanging freely. And then all of a sudden I felt another pull, and this line just slowly started to slide out of my chest and just hung on, just stuck on my lap. And the chemotherapy then arrives. And of course, everybody's a little bit panicked and chaotic, because there's probably a small hole in my chest, and they're all like putting stuff in it to make sure it's okay. And then we kind of hear back from the nurses to say, they've never seen this happen before. You have to go to surgery to take this thing out. Mm-hmm. Plus also, we're late with the chemotherapy. If we had administrated that whilst it was slightly in the wrong place, I'd have needed plastic surgery all around here. And we, as much as you went as white as a sheet.
Well, I'm really good with medical things.
Not quite.
Actually, I did quite well, because I was sat at the side watching this thing.
More of a mum job than
Mum
a
was Mum was the nurse. In fact, she would have loved to have been a nurse, right. But has proven her skills with you, I think. Because she sat each night and was always there for you. Yeah. But that was an amazing sign on the 7th day. Yeah. Something else happened, though, in radiotherapy, which we've not talked about that much, but it was quite amazing, wasn't it?
It was amazing. I mean, a couple of times, I'd go into this radiotherapy room. I had this mask made of my face. I was clamped to a table, and not a very nice scene, considering I couldn't move, and this big machine was about to fire something into my face. And I remember the first time I felt the sensation of a hand just tapping on the side of my face, just where I suppose they were going to fire the stuff. And I felt it. I could hear it. It was like audible, and it was almost like I could feel it. So they're watching me behind 6-foot lead walls, you know, on a camera because they can't go near this stuff. And they can see me on the CCTV, like stroking the side of my head. And so the lady comes over the tannoy and says, Dave probably, you've got to keep still. You need to put your arms down. And I said, no, there's somebody still in the room. And she's looking, she's like, there's nobody in the room. I said, somebody's tapping on the side of my face. And she's like, there's nobody in there. And so she came in to check and reassured me. And I was like, that's a little bit odd. But, you know, when we read in the Bible about, you know, the fourth man in the fire.
I know. And there was also, and you forget these things, that's why talking the story through again and just making sure you're accurate with it is so important. But you also saw blue light. Yeah.
And so when the radiotherapy happened, they said, you will not know it's happening. The noise of the machine stays the same. So you won't know if the machine is on or off, and there'll be no sensation to you. You just sit there and just let it happen. But what was amazing for me was the noises stayed the same, but I knew the exact moment when the radiation was happening because my vision and my light, like my eyes, you have to keep them closed. It was filled with this blue light that was like an intense kind of blue light that filled my vision. And at first, it kind of took me a little bit by surprise, and I couldn't really do a lot because I was clamped down. But we told the person straight away. I was like, well, I know when the stuff's happening because my whole vision, everything goes this bright neon type blue type thing. And she was like, well, that shouldn't be happening. I'm not sure what that is. So we ended up having to see a specialist consultant. Yeah. And, I mean...
He said that there's no light involved. It's a totally different process.
It shouldn't happen.
And there was, you know, our friend Jack Grableski had just heard a prophecy about healing. And you know how prophets have these interesting comments and signs. The sign of this will be blue light. Yeah. And we've got so many of those little stories, I think, that make all of these bits fit together in God was with you at the beginning, middle, and right the way through. Yeah. I do need to bring you back to you started this by saying you were going to major on a specific thing, which we've passed the moment, a wardrobe.
Yeah. That is right.
So
what I was going to do was cleverly come back to that.
You were already going that way. Well, you carry on down your track, but the reason I say that is that I think that day for me was we're onto this.
Yes.
You know, as the church, as a pastor, as a father, we're going to get this done. Yeah. So how are you going to weave that back then, Dave?
Very cleverly. So as we've got to this stage where chemotherapy, radiotherapy, but as you can remember, I told you that what was the darkest week of my life prior to all of this. It was the week of unknown, waiting for the results. Mm-hmm. And of course, there was that moment when we had to go back and receive the diagnosis. But that morning was quite interesting for me. I think I'd had a nightmare the night before, which was fairly common in this whole process. Some of the anti-sickness drugs I then started to have there was hallucination and various things going on. I remember like the Back to the Future moment where I would kind of see a family portrait of our family and I would like disappear, you know, out of that thinking, is this going to be our story? And I remember going back... The day we went back for the results, where we've talked about with Pete and Kath, I came out of my bedroom that day, and by this time, my face looked quite deformed on this side, and I wore sunglasses to kind of hide what was going on. And I remember getting to the top of the stairs and had to be pretty careful, so tipped my head back just to see. And I remember this moment where, and so this is the fourth level, and the opportunity presented. You were obviously going to come with me, and you opened the wardrobe that morning. And I suppose in the natural, you would just want to wear what's comfy. You would want to wear... This could be a day that was a life-changing news day. But God told you, I believe, to pick out your best suit. Not usually associated with going to hospital consultations. It's usually the surgeon that would wear the suit. And so when I came to the bottom of the stairs and I saw you wearing your best suit, I questioned it and said, why are you wearing that? And the response was on the lines of, well, we're going to see a number of experts today in their field, but we're an expert in ours. And where they may look at science manuals, we look at the Word of God, and we take this situation seriously, and we're in control. And that was the moment I'd noticed that leading while bleeding on this level 4 that I've just made up, the opportunity presented to you to be that level of leader came when you put the suit on.
Yeah, well, when I got out of bed, the natural thing would be slip something on, put your jeans on, etc. But as clearly as I think I've heard things in the past, it was get your suit on.
Yeah.
And with that putting of the suit on, I think an authority was given. And a genuine, because, for all of us, if you go into meeting consultants, they know more than you do.
Yeah.
We had a friend, a professor, who put his team on finding out what that cancer was. We thank God for that. He was an expert in all that field of research. But I felt as I woke up, there's an eye consultant, there's a professor of research consultant, but I'm a consultant. And this ought to be my field of expertise. Because if you are a leader of a church, if in preaching you're consistently making statements about our authority in Christ, that we've been given authority to use the name of Jesus, then I felt that day I'm a consultant, and whatever happens today, we're going to make it through. So I did. I think perhaps Irene put a nice frock on as well, and we and we went. And I remember the interview where we heard the bad news.
Yes.
And then you're thrust into this world that you were not prepared for. And we went often into that particular ward with all the descriptions you're given of small children with feeding tubes, etc. But I think that for Irene and myself, we went in there, yes, as parents, but also as experts in our field, knowing that Jesus is who he says he is.
Yeah.
And that though this is a deadly thing, there's a name that's higher, etc. And almost those thoughts of, if you proclaim this on platforms, it has to work in your daily life.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't think we were, I think we were measured in it, but I certainly felt a new confidence, and we had prayer backup. We could talk for a lot on prayer meetings where people prayed specifically and powerfully, and thank God for Nigerian intercessors that were really strong in faith and so on. And I think on that day when we spoke to the consultant, and a number of people were a bit nervous of her. She was a great consultant, but a little bit, let's say, strong and very firm.
I won her over in the end.
I think you did. And, well, I remember when all of this was through and you were given the all clear, I remember the consultant said to Irene something like, your recipe has worked. And actually, we, during that time, would do our best to do that little pastoral visit round families. Not a lot. We didn't encroach on people's worlds, but we were there meant to be as light in dark situations.
Yeah. And moving on a little bit, I went through all of the treatment, and there's a lot of stories we could share in and around that, and how difficult that was. And it's difficult to start naming people we're thankful for, because there's so many.
So many, yeah.
We've mentioned Pete and Kath, but I think Jeff and Kay Lucas were...
that was a great time.
Pretty instrumental. Obviously,
to lighten it slightly, there is a story.
There is a story. I mean, one of the tests, I had a week full of tests, lumbar punctures, scans, needles, but there was a test at the end of the week. Obviously, coming to you at the age of 16, you said, I'm going to have to sit you down and talk to you about something. The doctors have said that because of the amount of treatment that's going to go through your body, they would suggest that children would be unlikely in the future. And that must have been a fairly hard conversation for you to have with me. I think Pete Atkins was there at the time. And it meant that I'd have to go to a sperm bank at the age of 16. And you never, ever expect that you'd have to do something like that. So I suppose to lighten the mood slightly, it happened to be the day that Jeff Lucas was going to spend the day with us. And
he came to Leicester Hospital.
He came to the hospital.
We had to go to another part of the hospital, didn't we?
We did. And I said to Jeff, I've got an interesting test coming up, mate. Do you want to come and wait?
It was particularly. I mean,
it was funny.
My recollection of that day was not heavy duty. Actually,
No.
It was just fun because we went into this room and with so many people suffering, it was so somber, and for obvious reasons, people were really low. And so we went in there, and you pick up the story there. Yeah,
well, we won't go into any more detail, but obviously I thought it'd be appropriate that when the test was completed, I came out into the rather somber waiting room with the sample cup raised high, singing some sort of old hymn, Victory in Jesus, I believe. So I had a round of applause from you and Jeff.
And I clapped profusely.
The waiting room
no
looked
one else
on.
Did,
Nobody joined in with that for some strange reason. But then Jeff would often say, like, he's like a real preacher. So sometimes he'll get up on the stage and he'll say things like, I hope this all exists. That kind of thing. Yeah. But actually, he did one of the biggest faith moves we've seen. And that was...
Because he's very measured in those things.
Incredibly measured.
Recognising suffering and pain.
He must have heard the voice of God on this, because in the natural, it's not something you do. He brought a champagne bottle onto a... Wow. You went first. You went first. It was my. I'm fine. I'm fine. He brought a champagne bottle onto discreetly, obviously, onto a children's oncology ward, and said, "One day, we will open this together."
Take it home, put it on the mantelpiece.
That's faith, isn't it?
I think is what he said, and I think it is true that something happened with him as well, and you have featured in one of his books as well, because he became a part of our journey. I think it's an amazing thing how when you needed a happy voice, he would turn up. And and of course Jeff, being Jeff, always surrounded by funny stories, and I'm sure the one that you've just shared, he will have embellished somewhat.
I hope so.
And shared, but both of us felt a part of that, and Jeff's been a good friend for a long period of time.
There is so many people we could mention, even American friends and Dwayne and everybody been in and around that was amazing at those moments in time. And I suppose we get towards Christmas, and the dream and the prayer was that this would be all over by Christmas. And I think 3 or 4 days before, we were walking around the Bale, I think at the time, if my memory serves me right. And Mum had a call on the final scan just to say that it was all clear.
Well, actually, we didn't get the call for the all clear until after Christmas.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll tell you the final bit of this, because that Christmas where we're still... let me just check with Irene, I'm accurate.
Irene is doing some sort of movement.
Yeah, well, yeah, there were other signs as well. Irene's making signs, Dave, so
Yes,
we're going to have to keep with this.
Keep the track.
But that Christmas, in a sense, should have been quite a difficult, hard Christmas. But if you remember Christmas Day, and I remember this distinctly, after we'd had our meal, there was such a sense of peace and contentment.
Yeah.
That everybody, including the dog, I remember,
Yeah.
because the dog was like this, asleep. Everybody, obviously I wasn't because I saw this, and I did sleep that afternoon. It was almost as though we now can relax.
Wow.
But we did have to wait until I think it was the second or third week in January for the actual result. Though I think we were so sure at Christmas that did give us the peace.
Amazing.
But last week, Dave, and this is why it's kind of nice to connect these things with times. Last week I was at a meeting. This week, where are we now? Anyway, it didn't really matter. Last week, I was at a meeting with Terry Virgo.
Yeah.
And I remember that it was at that meeting.
I was going to share that actually.
In the January.
Yes.
20 years? How long is it?
That would have been January 2004.
January 2004. We're in this room with all of these leaders waiting for the phone call. And, of course, I'm a little bit edgy and not totally concentrating. And then the phone buzzes in my hands.
Yeah.
In my hand, and I walk out of the room, and it's Irene saying, "It's all clear." And I went back into the room and shared it with the group, and there was, a lot of applause and thanks, etc. And every year since, I may have missed one or two, but even this year, always mention, this is the meeting. Where we got our victory, if you like, and our good news story. So it's a story now, Dave, right up to date.
Yeah.
And we could spend a lot of time that you made a decision that if you came through this, you were going to give your life to what you're doing now. And, of course, you're proving that. God's blessed you. You're involved in worship. You've had opportunities to travel in places many haven't. And, of course, your future is incredibly bright. And we could tell so many stories, couldn't we?
Well, I suppose bringing up to speed with I got married. And that to me was when you're given the list of facts that you have to face and may not look the same again and all of these type of things. I thought, would that be in my future? And we'll probably throw a photo up or two in a minute. And we got married on the 4th of August 2007 to the incredible Sarah. And she just total gift. We're married way out of my league. I've been told on a number of times. And I suppose when me and Sarah were in our engaged stage, and I said, if you choose to marry me, that's a brilliant decision on your part. However, there are these facts we've got to face as a couple, and we started to talk about the doctors in the natural had said children might be difficult, and she was a qualified midwife and, delivers babies as a profession, and I'm sure always wanted to be a mum. So that was a difficult conversation, but in the simplicity of not knowing all the answers, in the mystery of all of this, to see a miracle, we just had to give God the impossible. And to bring the story right up to date, we've got 4 miracle kids, and God has gone exceedingly above and beyond. And you had them all this week, so well done for doing that.
Yes, and God gave us the gift of babysitting over they're not really babies now, are they?
No, we've got 16, 12, 10 and 5.
It is a fantastic story.
Amazing.
And of course you then enter into the mysteries of...
Yes.
Could it be, and we mentioned this about Paul right at the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah.
Could it be that through some of that suffering and pain, you were given a perspective that a lot of people really don't have.
Yeah.
With regard to the importance of the Christian faith.
Yeah.
The need to maximise your life.
Yeah.
The need to say, you know, I'm not going to fritter away my time. I want
Yeah.
it to count.
Yeah.
And I don't just want it to count for my own benefit, but for the benefit of the kingdom, which
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about. And I want to say, well done. Because though our role was hard,
Very.
yours was far harder. And it's through your experience that all the things we've spoken of in terms of leadership and character and, you know, all of those things, it's this transformation, isn't it, that God really does turn that which is evil and intended for your harm to good.
Yeah.
And you are who you are, not because God sent you this stuff, but because when it came, we
Yeah.
together didn't become cynical, didn't say I'm giving up on church, didn't say God doesn't exist,
Yeah.
but dug deeper into Scripture to identify with the fact that whatever happens, Jesus really is Lord, and
Yeah.
we're in this very short life that we are given by God that we have to live to the full. And thankfully, the promise over your life today is long life that you'll be satisfied with. Yeah. So good chat.
Great chat.
Good church chat.
Good church chat.
Yeah.